Yeah, we saw it in front of our eyes, didn't we, against Chelsea? That you sort of see Diaz and Guardiola go off, and it gives you encouragement because the players that are coming on and that back four doesn't look stable. And it's not. And last night, it's not a game that I imagine millions of people will have watched. The Brighton versus Manchester City game, but a little bit of a silent killer for them, in the sense that you felt as though, the Sunderland one, you can probably understand it. Chelsea was a bad one for them, conceding in the last minute, and you could see the disappointment, couldn't you, in the crowd and on the face of the players and Pep Guardiola at the end of that one. But to then drop points at home against Brighton when, they're already sort of dropping points, they're already sort of drifting away from, or Arsenal are sort of drifting away from them. That would have been a real gut-wrencher, and it just leaves City in a position right now where they really do have to think about how they hang in there for March, April, because there's no doubt that you get to March, April and you are 4 or 5 points off Arsenal, there will be real pressure applied by us, by everybody, by the situation, by the Premier League title looming. So they've got to try and hang in there and not be out of it. I don't think they will be, but they're going to have to do something defensive, whether it's in the transfer market or get players back quickly, because the more they play with that back four, the more they're going to drop points.
A word on Chelsea. Obviously, again, we saw them at the weekend. Tumultuous week. They had their new coach watching them at Fulham last night and had Cucurella sent off, and it appears to have cost them the points. Where are you with their sort of ongoing melodrama?
I don't know, really. I mean, it's an interesting one. Liam Rossini coming in, and really interesting appointment from a point of view of, we know where it's come from, obviously from the multi-club model, but a real surprise, I think, to many. If you just said 3 or 4 months ago that Liam Rossini would be manager of Chelsea, it came out of nowhere. Obviously, Maresca's gone, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the next few months, because it's a tough football club, that one. I mean, look, the big clubs are tough if it's not going well. If results aren't right, then there is a lot of scrutiny and pressure comes on managers and on players, and I think that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in this next few weeks. They need a couple of good results in January.
This is going to be a shorter one because you have to be in our studio in a second, but I wanted to end on this, and I hope this is okay because we haven't planned it, but the Newcastle 4-3 last night, the reports I've read of it were very much in the context of the very sad news about Kevin Keegan's illness. That was a Kevin Keegan 4-3 win, wasn't it? Which I thought was a really beautiful thing, and Eddie Howe expressed himself very well on that topic, and I know, of course, he was your international manager, and you might have a word or two to say about that. Yeah,
he was a great man, Kevin Keegan, and I always remember thinking of sort of the qualities of Kevin when he was the England manager, about his honesty, his integrity, his enthusiasm every single day on the training pitch, about how he wanted players to enjoy themselves and get the very best out of themselves and go forward and play with excitement and thrill. And then you just think the Glenn Hoddle sort of had the really good tactical mind, and if you could combine the two of them, I remember at the time thinking you had almost like the perfect manager. But Kevin Keegan was a great man manager. He made players happy, he made players excited, he made players sort of enthused on the training pitch to think that go and play in football. Almost like you felt like he was still the kid that played like in the playground as a 7-8-year-old. It never left him, you know what I mean? He always wanted to join in and sort of be part of the training session with the lads and be with the boys, if you like, and that's how he was as a manager. And that's how his teams played at Newcastle. I mean, they were exciting, so exciting. We had some right battles with them and great games. And I know that Liverpool game obviously is famous, the Liverpool games that they've had, the 4-3s, 4-4s, but we had some fantastic battles against them as well. So I wish him all the best. Eddie Howe, look, there's still something about Newcastle, not having the greatest of seasons, but I've still got a lot of love for Newcastle in terms of just what they are. I think they're a good side. I like watching them play, and I wouldn't rule out them going on a run, because there are a lot of teams trying to find their feet still. There are a lot of teams well below the standard, well below par, not hitting anything like their straps that they should be. And Newcastle have got a lot of quality. They just need to make sure they keep that best 11 on the pitch and see what happens.
Yeah, actually, the middle of the table, Gary, since you mentioned it, from Brentford in 5th to Bournemouth in 15th is covered by 7 points. So that race for potentially even Champions League, but certainly Europe is great.
It's up there for grabs. I mean, you watch United last night, they've had, I think, 6 opportunities, it feels like, in the last sort of like 3 weeks to go into the top 4, top 5. I mean, they've missed every single opportunity to do it, but that's how scruffy this league is right now. I mean, it's as if you can sort of drop points, draw games, lose a game, and still not be really out of sort of contention for where you want to be. It's like almost like everyone's stuck in the mud. It's incredible, really. Yeah, it's everyone's in the same boat. It feels like, apart from a couple of teams who are doing well.
Okay, and finally then, Gary, Manchester United, you saw them at Turf Moor last night, which was in itself a really entertaining game. As a United person, would you come out of that feeling better about yourself or not?
I don't know. I mean, look, I think you said partway through tonight that it's 50 games. It's the end of a monstrous run of Christmas fixtures in 19 days. And it's been a tiring 19 days as a Manchester United fan. I know that obviously I'm not going to name some of the games now that are within that period because some of them started before, but it just feels like when I reflected today, this morning, coming down here, and I've done, I think, 6 or 7 of United's last 9 matches, and 2 or 3 of the games I really like, but when you think they played Everton with 10 men, Wolves, Leeds, Burnley, Bournemouth, and one more,
West
Ham. A lot of those teams are losing, apart from Leeds, a lot of those teams are losing a lot of football matches and playing really poorly, and are at this moment, the inferior teams in the Premier League. I think Manchester United have picked up 5 points out of 18 possible points against those teams. And West Ham, Wolves, Burnley, Bournemouth have been losing a lot of matches to every other team. It's been such a missed opportunity, and the loss of a manager during that period. And I remember stood on the touchline before the Everton game, which was the first in that run. I know that obviously Crystal Palace, Newcastle and Villa have been in there as well. So there's been 9 games. The other 6 that I've mentioned are the ones that I would have expected Manchester United to get a lot of points in. And I remember looking at the fixture list and thinking, Manchester United could be going into the new year. I fancy them to be in the top 3 or 4. If they can pick up 12 points, 14 points out of those 18, they'll be right up there, because the other teams are not doing well. They're struggling. They've got tougher runs. They're not in good form. And yeah, I just feel really disappointed just generally about the whole of that period. And obviously, they say a manager loses his job, it's the worst thing that can happen in a football club, because the reality of it is, then there's a failure across the board. Everyone's got to take responsibility for it. So yeah, I don't feel great about last night, in the sense that ultimately I just look at it upon it as the end of a period of games, and what's happened to Ruben Amorim. And look, last night I think United deserved to win. I think they were the better team, but you'd expect that. They were playing against Burnley, who haven't won a game and can't win a game hardly. And I thought it was a good night for Sesko. I thought in the first half that he got into some good positions in between centre forwards, but in between centre backs, and it didn't quite happen for him, and he was a bit frustrated on the ball. I thought the ball kept bouncing off him when it was played into him, but he had 2 magnificent finishes, and he needed that. He really did need that, and he had a big smile on his face. And look, I've never played centre forward for Manchester United, but I do know that I've seen centre forwards come to the club and not score for a period, and now that really weighs on the mind, and it sort of, because the pressure on them and the price tag, and he's young. So let's hope from here on in that he can really just hit a run of games where he can score some goals. Bruno Fernandes coming back, I think, was really important. Him going off, I think that was probably decided before the game that he could only do 60 minutes, but the game did swing a little bit after that. Yeah, a couple of disappointing goals to give away. They need Maguire and De Ligt back, and see whether that really can provide some sort of solidity at the back. Need obviously Mbeumo and Ahmad back as well. So there's players to come back. It's not all doom and gloom, but just a really disappointing, tiring period that ends with them in with a chance of qualifying for the Champions League this season if they can put a run together. But they've got an FA Cup game, and then I think they've got Manchester City and then Arsenal. So 2 tough games coming up, which, they beat Newcastle, did well against Villa, won at Crystal Palace away, and then the 6 games that I've mentioned there, the ones that they've let themselves down in. So crazy, really.
And since we're coming to Cup weekend, I mean, especially since they don't have Europe, a tasty cup run could light a bit of a fire on the Manchester United season, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you can win a trophy in a season where you're not doing brilliantly well, or you're in a transition and you're not going to win the league, which they're quite clearly not, I I would never say that's a bad season when you win a trophy. I think it's about the direction of the club. It's about the progression on the pitch. It's about the plan and where it's going. And I think that's what needs to be put into place. And it does look like that's going to be put off again for another 4 or 5 months, doesn't it? In the sense that it does look like all roads are pointing towards a temporary manager coming in, which I don't disagree with, because if they can get a Ancelotti or a Tuchel at the end of the season, a manager of that ilk or that stature, then you'd wait for them. You would wait for them, and you'd take the risk of having an interim manager who's going to try and get you over the line and get you into Europe for the rest of this season. But they have to make sure that I think they get that type of manager at the end of the season if they're going to wait. Because the risk of obviously putting an interim in is, I mean, look, they've done it twice in the last, whatever it is, 10, 12 years. And it's worked with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, it didn't work with Rangnick. So probably why they're talking to Ollie again, probably why they're talking to Michael Carrick, Ruud van Nistelrooy as well as being mentioned. So be interesting to see which one of those they go for. And there'll be a level of emotion with those players coming back in. And I just hope there is some stability towards the end of the season that allows a new manager to come in. Because it's been disappointing. It has. It really has.
Okay, well, 2026 lies ahead to cheer them and everybody else up. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you.
Ian Wright and Roy Keane furious after Arsenal 0-0 Liverpool. Full reactions. Arsenal player ratings versus Liverpool. Gyökeres drops 3 out of 10 stinker as 5 out of 10s disappoint. Mikel Arteta's Arsenal missed the opportunity to go 8 points clear of second-placed Manchester City after a goalless draw at home to Liverpool. The Gunners still lead the league by 6 points as they go in search of a first Premier League title since 2004. Despite an early onslaught by their hosts, Liverpool hung in throughout the first half and might have laid claim to the best chance of the opening 45 minutes. A mix-up at the back presented Conor Bradley with an open net, but the right back could only find the crossbar with his lofted effort. Arsenal hearts were in mouths again just after the restart, after Leandro Trossard was wrong-sided by Florian Wirtz, but replays confirmed Anthony Taylor was right to wave away any claims for a penalty. It set the tone for things to come, with Arsenal failing to register a shot in the second half until added time. expressport.co.uk rates the Arsenal players from their 0-0 draw at home to Liverpool. He was almost involved in a defensive howler when rushing out to collect a ball that William Saliba had already decided to pass it back. Otherwise, the Spanish goalkeeper was completely untested. Jurrien Timber didn't really put a foot wrong throughout the 90 minutes, with the Dutchman chipping in at both ends of the pitch. The other party involved in the mistake that almost cost a goal, but it was otherwise another clean sheet for the Frenchman. Really should have won the game with the final touch, but couldn't convert from close range at the back post. With the absence of any real Liverpool center forward, the Brazil ace wasn't troubled much. Taken off with an injury early in the second half, but the defender had been entirely comfortable throughout the 50-odd minutes he was on the pitch for. Arteta and co will be crossing their fingers that the Ecuador international is back up to full fitness sooner rather than later. Greedily took the ball in his stride when a dummy would have left Bukayo Saka with a free shot at goal in the second half and struggled to contribute to Arsenal's build-up play in midfield. Martin Odegaard. It's a credit to the effort of the Liverpool midfield that the Arsenal skipper was so quiet throughout the match, with the Norway international failing to make an impact. Declan Rice put himself about in the center of the park but didn't have the same impact as at the weekend against Bournemouth, a rare off day for the usual indomitable midfield star. Bukayo Saka started on fire and looked as if he was in the mood to torment the Liverpool backline all evening, but after an initial bright start, the English international began to fade and was ultimately subbed off with Arsenal chasing a winner. Victor Gyökeres. It felt like Arsenal were playing with 10 men for most of the time he was on the pitch, a completely ineffective and useless performance from the man who was brought in to take Arsenal to the next level. As it goes, it looks as if they'll get the job done in spite of the Swede, not because of him. Leandro Trossard. One of the brighter Arsenal attackers, and if it wasn't for a couple of unfortunate deflections, he might have picked up an assist or two. Might have felt hard done by to have been taken off on the hour mark. Substitutes. Miles Lewis-Skelly rushed onto the pitch to replace the injured Piero Hincapié, but never really got up to speed with the game, struggled with the pace of Jeremy Frimpong and was careless in possession at times. The youngster will have to sharpen up. Gabriel Martinelli. incredibly lucky not to have been sent off for an ugly incident involving Conor Bradley. The winger threw the ball at the head of the Liverpool defender, who was down injured, before attempting to push him off the pitch. Had the odd moment off the bench, but didn't create much. Gabriel Jesus. If Gyökeres was useless, the ex-Man City forward wasn't much better. A tame header was the only real sight of goal he enjoyed, but was nowhere to be seen when Noni Madueke flashed a dangerous cross across the face of Liverpool's goal. Didn't do much, either good or bad. Noni Madueke could have had 2 assists on another night and was the only substitute who made a proper impact.